Hello everybody, it's Writing Tutor Sarah here, and today we're going to talk about introductions and conclusions. I know this is something a few of you guys have reached out to me for help on, and so I am happy to make a little video to walk you through it. So without further ado, let's jump right in with the hook. Now, some people don't like to refer to it as the hook. A lot of professors, it's a little bit controversial, but I'd argue that any introduction to your paper could be referred to as a hook, not just the ones that the professors don't want. So I refer to a hook as the opener to your paper. This part of the paper is set up for the rest of your writing. Anything in this paragraph should help to aid in the overall point of the paper. A primary objective of the introduction in general is to lead towards your thesis, so you want to start with something similar or related to the paper's topic to open the paper with. So the point of the opener is to both intrigue the reader, to hook them in, and to also segue into the actual topic of your paper. So some openers are also known as hooks, and they include an anecdote or story, a strong statement or declaration, an interesting statistic or fun fact that is related to the paper's topic, keep that in mind, a description that sets the reader up for a situation related to the paper, or a metaphor or simile that compares something to the paper's topic. Now, I do have a couple of examples from my own writing today. I am a bit of a harsh critic on myself, so I wouldn't say they're perfect, but they are some good examples to kind of get the ball rolling for some things that you might put in the introduction of your own paper. First, we're going to look at probably my least favorite opening, because I personally don't like using I, me, my, you, us, you, your. It kind of feels a little unprofessional, but it worked in this paper and I let it slide for myself. But every time I look at it, I'm a little sad. But it is a good example of an anecdote or story. Usually we don't want to do stories about ourselves. We usually want to do stories about, people similar to the topic or a fictional person, because, again, we want to avoid the I, the me, the my. But I digress. That is something I did in this one. But let's give it a read and see how it sounds. Every day I watch my boyfriend enjoy his free time, reading new books and watching new shows. He sleeps in peace while I am up at midnight with a pounding headache, attempting to finish all 50 of my math problems before the deadline, while watching videos, desperate to grasp the concept of equilibrium constants before tomorrow's big chemistry test. As a biology major, working hard to make it into UCLA and taking 5 classes per semester, it can be frustrating watching other people get to relax and enjoy lighter loads. But I know that when I graduate, the extra hours spent studying will equate to a larger paycheck at the end of the week. In the long run, I will someday be able to relax while others scramble to make ends meet, yet that future often seems light years away to the me that lives in the present. Lewis Jenkins, a unique poet of his own time, found his own special way to describe how I feel whenever I get stressed over my workload. Football by Lewis Jenkins uses prose poem formatting, metaphors, and an overarching narrative to demonstrate how sometimes leisure must be traded for hard work to ensure stability and success. You'll notice it's a pretty smooth flow from a hook into a little bit of background about the paper. I'm just hinting at Lewis Jenkins a little bit, into my thesis, my real meat and potatoes of my paper. So this is one way you could open your paper. Another example I have, a little less whimsical, a little less about me, is about racism. A little bit of a switch there, sorry. But this would be described as a description that sets the reader up for a situation related to the paper. White guilt is felt by white people when recognizing their racial privileges, acknowledging their own racist behaviors, and feeling responsible for others' racist behaviors. Some people will use this guilt to educate themselves and attempt to be less racist, while others may try to remove this guilt and become defensive. White ignorance is not the ignorance man possesses, but the willful ignorance man has in regard to racial injustice. When plagued by guilt, individuals may turn to ignorance in attempts to absolve themselves from blame. Boys Go to Jupiter by Danielle Evans uses ambiguity to allow readers to discover that between the lines containing ignorant beliefs and white guilt lies an epiphany about how complex racism truly is. Loaded topic, I know. But you'll notice I do use a bit of a definition, because white guilt isn't always a phrase that a lot of people are aware of, so I want to make sure that my audience knows when I refer to white guilt, this is what I'm referring to. And it's a pretty big part of the paper, so it's important to have that definition there. And the best time to bring it up, honestly, is the introduction. Because I'm not dedicating a singular paragraph to just white guilt, the whole paper is about white guilt, it's important to bring it up early on. And honestly, sometimes the hook's a really good way to do that. But you'll notice how I go from my broad hook to something a little more niche and I'm kind of hinting at the plot of the story that I'm talking about before I go into my thesis. So you'll notice the sentence before it segues into what I'm about to talk about in my paper, specifically using the themes of the paper that I read. So those are just some examples of hooks. They're not perfect examples by any means, but you'll see that they actually help open up the floor to a reader to fully grasp what the paper's about to be about. Sometimes that's by having an engaging, relatable story. Other times that's by having a description so they learn something new that's really important to understand for your paper. Let's talk about not hooks. I'm sorry, I'm taking the hooks away. We're going on. We're moving on. We're going to introduce the work or topic you're focusing on in your paper. You'll notice I did this in my examples. It works especially well when you have an analytical paper or an informative essay. It provides some background to the topic of the paper. You notice I try to hint at that with my Lewis Jenkins mention about how broadly his paper is about, and broadly what Danielle Evans' paper is touching on. So I'm not giving away all these really major plot points, just more a broad theme about the paper and about the paper I am about to write about the paper. So for a research paper, this might not be a good method, or not a bad method, but it's more that you might want to expand a little more. And for that, you might consider having a second paragraph after your introduction that is dedicated to this type of background information. So I think of it like this. If you got a paper that's 4 to 5 pages long, and it's not a research heavy paper, it's more like an analytic paper where you're analyzing, say, a poem about Lewis Jenkins and the meaning of work, you might only want a sentence or two of background information. Where would you put that? That's kind of hard to fit into your paper. You put it in your introduction after your hook. It gets the reader set up for the topic on the paper. It gives them just enough background knowledge that they'll be able to understand all the nitty-gritty details you're about to go into. And it's going to make a really nice segue into your thesis. When you've got a research paper where there's this giant topic that's looming over your head, and you might have a really core definition be something that readers are not familiar with, you might want to dedicate a whole paragraph to explaining that concept to the reader before you delve into those details in the other body paragraphs. So that's about kind of deciding whether or not you need maybe 1 to 2 sentences of background information in the intro, or whether it needs its own paragraph. You can also, if you want to step away from background information, you can also focus on an important scene from the focused work. This could also be used as your hook if you have a really interesting one. So you might open with a scene from Fahrenheit 451 where they're burning all the books in a pile. That's a really engaging, reactive scene that's really going to get someone's attention. Why are they burning books? Oh my goodness, that's such a big thing to have happen. A big pile of books burning on display. Wow. Also, Ray Bradbury has a really engaging writing style. So you could use that as a hook, for example. And as long as it has something to do with your thesis, I don't see the problem with it. So I think it's a good thing to rely on those things if you're, struggling to, find a really good opener. As long as you quote your sources, of course. Then we've got our thesis. Our thesis is the star of the show for our introduction paragraphs. If you want to know more about thesis, I'm just going really very broad about our thesis here. You can also see our thesis slides and thesis video. We have got a separate video dedicated to thesis. So we're going to end our introduction after our hook, after our background information. We're going to end our introduction with our thesis statement, in which we're going to do the following. We're going to state our specific topic. We're going to indicate a position. We're going to assert our claim, say what we think. This is often the answer to your prompt if the professor provides one. And then you're going to kind of break down very briefly the subpoints of your paper. Those are often going to be the topics of your body paragraphs and what you plan to use to prove your position on the topic. Now, I'm just going to hop back over to this to show you a little bit of an example. I've highlighted my thesis here. This is my topic. Football by Lewis Jenkins is my main focus. It's the only piece of evidence I use in this paper for the most part. So I'm stating a specific topic. We're focusing on this poem. And then we're going to, say our position or claim. You can also break down the subpoints before the position claim as I do here. Here are my subpoints. I talk about how it uses prose poem formatting. That's one paragraph. How it uses metaphors. That's my second paragraph. And an overarching narrative. That's my third paragraph. And how do I use these subpoints? Here's where my assertion comes in. I'm saying that they use those things to demonstrate how leisure can be traded for hard work to ensure your stability and success. This is my big claim here. This is my big answer. This is my main point. This is what I'm arguing in my paper. So that's just a little example. I feel like this one does it a little better than my short story analysis. I was a little too broad with my thesis on that one. Again, I'm a little harsh on my papers, but that's what makes somebody grow and change, right? So a lot of people have some confusion between topic sentences, main ideas, and thesis statements. So I made a little bonus slide about what the difference is. They all go hand in hand. They're all little buddies. They all work together to build each other up. I would say that the first big core, the star of the show, as I said before, is your thesis statement. That is the last sentence of your introductory paragraph. It answers the prompt if the professor has given one, and it states the main point of your paper and briefly states how you plan to prove your point in the body paragraphs. Now, the thesis statement contains your main idea, which is the main point of your paper, the answer to your prompt. It's part of the thesis statement. And you can use your thesis statement to create your topic sentences. It is the first sentence of each body paragraph, and it'll tell the reader what the specific paragraph is about. Remember before when I mentioned those sub-points? These are often the topics of your body paragraph. They're in your thesis. They're usually, when I talked about using metaphors or using prose poem format, those ended up turning into my topic sentences. That's what I led with in my body paragraph. I put my first foot forward, my strong foot that tells the whole theme of the paragraph. It's going to be my topic sentence. And if I'm wondering what to put for my topic sentence, I could just relate back to my thesis and see how I planned to prove my point using my thesis. Now we're going to hop on over to our conclusion. We've really gone as in-depth as possible with that introduction. And I've got great news for your conclusion. It's often very similar to your introduction, and I'll explain that in a little bit with a lovely visual. But for now, here are the things we need to do in our conclusion. We need to put our main point into perspective by rewording the thesis in a way that addresses the topics you've mentioned throughout the body paragraphs. We're using this to segue into discussing a bigger picture. You could be involving the mentioning of modern interpretation of the topic. You could talk about a final thought that ties the whole paper together into some larger meaning. But no matter what you do, you want to make sure that your ending has emotional appeal. You want to make sure your last sentences are as conclusive as possible to tie up all those loose ends. This way, we can make sure the reader's left satisfied with that final stance of your paper by writing sentences that aren't going to leave that reader searching for clarifications in future analysis. Let's take a look at how I concluded this paragraph. This is my conclusion paragraph. Jenkins uses an intricate narrative, a multifaceted allegory, and a unique format in his poem Football to alert readers to the fact that sometimes the right choice for the individual is not the choice that most people will make, and that it is important to make singular decisions, not ones skewed by societal pressure. While many people are satisfied with taking the easy way out, those who put in the hours and work hard are sure to be rewarded in a way that a leisure-focused individual will not. To look off towards a bright future in lieu of enjoying the superficial pleasures in the now ensures a long life full of success. It is important to remember this even when there is someone downfield waving to join them. Hard work and no play can often pay off in the long run. So, you'll notice I finish it off by making a little homage to the poem, because it's about football, and someone waving to join downfield is something that happens in the poem Football, for some context. I say that earlier, don't worry. And my big, heavy-hitting, this is what I want you to take away was, hard work and no play can often pay off, even if in the moment it feels kind of crappy to not be able to take in the leisure and enjoy yourself. So, you'll notice I've reworded my thesis. It does not sound like the same thesis, but I promise it does have the same key points. Remember, prose poem format is a unique format now. Metaphors and the metaphors are a multifaceted allegory. Now, I'm using really big words here. You don't have to do the same. And an intricate narrative, I believe, is, it's been a while since I wrote this paper, an overarching narrative. I decided to change that to intricate. So that is my rewording of my thesis. I segue into something broader. All people, not just the people in the poem. This is how people might see things. And I ended off with that big final bow, that big tie together of, well, even if there is someone saying, come join me, it's okay to say no to your playtime and to choose hard work instead, because it might just make things better for you in the long run. So that's giving the ending a little bit of emotional appeal and leaving them satisfied. Maybe they don't agree with your opinion, but they're satisfied that the paper is over and they know that the paper is over. They don't feel like they're left with questions. They know exactly what your stance is. Now let's talk about the hourglass effect. This is that visual I was mentioning. With your introduction, you'll notice we started with a broad topic and then went down to that specific thesis. With the conclusion, I feel like it's a mirrored effect. It does the opposite. It starts with that specific reworded thesis all the way down to that broad impact of, the general public. So this is like an hourglass. We go broad to narrow and narrow to broad. So to some extent, the introduction and conclusion kind of mirror each other in what type of content you're seeing and when. You're seeing broad to narrow for introduction, narrow to broad for conclusion, but they both contain that reworded thesis as well as something engaging to satisfy the reader. Anyways, I hope this helped you guys out. That's all we've got for today. But just a friendly reminder that if you're still finding yourself with any questions, comments, concerns, you can always find us at the Writing Center. We're here to help you master all things to do with writing and revising your paper, so stop by with a draft for us to look at or with questions about how to tackle your writing needs. We are always happy to help. For more information on the topic and more, please feel free to check our website for information and ways to meet with a tutor to help you with all your writing needs. Whether it be online, in person, or by email, we are always happy to help. So with that said, we do hope to see you soon, and yeah, goodbye.